The performance of the season.
Despised by English defence.
That must have been Emlyn.
Even if he didn't get along with him as a person.
He's ficking sick. That is what it felt like to watch Emlyn Hughes lift the European Cup in Rome in 1977. He was Liverpool's captain, and he had just led his club to the biggest prize in football. Next to him stood Tommy Smith, the man who had scored the winning header that night. The two men hugged. They smiled. They celebrated together in front of millions of people watching around the world. But behind that smile, Tommy Smith could barely stand the sight of Emlyn Hughes. This was not the only bitter relationship in Hughes's long and complicated career, and it was far from the worst one either. As we go back through the battles that made Hughes so disliked, use the hype feature and give this video some hype. It helps more football fans find stories like this, because Rome was the peak. To understand how Hughes got there, and why so many players around him felt anger instead of respect, we need to go back to the years when his reputation for conflict first began to grow. Ron Harris was one of the hardest defenders Chelsea ever had. People called him Chopper, and he earned that name with brutal tackles across the First Division, season after season, against every attacker unlucky enough to face him. He was feared across the whole country, and even his own teammates knew to stay on his good side. Harris was already angry with Hughes before their biggest clash. Hughes had been involved in an earlier challenge that badly injured Chelsea striker Peter Osgood. The research does not prove exactly what Hughes intended that day, or how much blame belonged to him alone. But Harris believed he owed Hughes something in return, and he was not the type of man to let a debt like that go unpaid. Football in this period was rough by nature, full of heavy tackles and little protection for skillful players. And grudges like this one were common between hard men and flair players alike. At Anfield, Harris got his chance. He hit Hughes with a brutal tackle that left the Liverpool captain on the ground in real pain. Hughes did not hide it. He shouted and made his suffering clear for everyone watching in the stadium that day to see. Harris expected trouble. He expected Tommy Smith, Liverpool's own hard man, to storm over and defend his captain. That is what teammates were supposed to do. Instead, Smith walked over slowly. He looked down at Hughes, still lying on the grass, and he smiled at Harris. Then he said something that stunned everyone nearby. "I could get to like you, Chopper." Think about what that moment really meant. An opponent had just hurt the Liverpool captain, and Hughes's own defender seemed pleased about it. That was not just an insult from a rival club. That was proof that something inside Liverpool's own dressing room had already turned against Hughes. Yet Hughes never backed down from danger. He did not hide from hard tackles or slow his game to avoid pain. He ran forward into more collisions, carried the ball into more danger, and kept pushing himself into the heart of the action. That courage made him a better player and a stronger captain. It also gave more opponents more reasons to want to stop him by any means necessary. If Harris showed that one man could hate Hughes, Norman Hunter showed how that hatred could turn into a weekly war. Hunter played for Leeds United, and he earned the nickname Bites Your Legs for a reason. He was the most feared defender in England, and Leeds were Liverpool's biggest rivals for the league title. Don Revie built his Leeds team to be ruthless and organized, while Bill Shankly built Liverpool to be fast, direct, and full of energy. This was not just a football rivalry. It was two entirely different footballing philosophies fighting for the same league title year after year, and Hughes played right into the middle of that clash. He was never happy sitting back in defense. He liked to drive forward from the back line into midfield, carrying the ball himself and joining every attack he could reach. Those runs put him directly in Norman Hunter's path again and again. Neither man was willing to give an inch. Hunter met Hughes with heavy, punishing challenges, match after match, season after season. Hughes absorbed the pain and kept coming back for more. Standing beside Hunter in that Leeds side was another dangerous opponent, the winger Peter Lorimer, famous for one of the hardest shots in English football. Lorimer's pace and his powerful long-range strikes meant Hughes could never fully relax, even after winning the ball back from Hunter, because Leeds could hurt Liverpool from almost anywhere on the pitch. This was not really about bravery, because nobody doubted that Hughes had plenty of that. The real problem was that Hughes never seemed able to slow down or stay quiet. Every match against Leeds turned into a personal test, as if Hughes needed to prove something new every single time he stepped onto the pitch. That constant energy made him brilliant to watch, but it also made rival defenders desperate to shut him down by any means possible, using whatever physical force the referee would allow. There was no single legendary fight between Hughes and Hunter. Instead, there was a long, grinding war fought across dozens of Liverpool against Leeds matches. Year after year, each one adding another layer of bitterness between two clubs that simply refused to like each other. That kind of bitterness from an outside rival, repeated season after season, was painful enough on its own, but the deepest wound of Hughes's career was not waiting on a rival's team sheet. It was standing right beside him in Liverpool's own dressing room. In May 1972, Liverpool traveled to Highbury to face Arsenal in a match that could decide the league title. Tommy Smith later claimed that before the game, Hughes came to him privately and said that some Arsenal players were willing to lose the match on purpose for £50 each. This is Smith's allegation. It has never been proven as fact, and Hughes never confirmed it happened the way Smith described. Liverpool drew that match, 0-0, and lost the First Division title to Derby County that season. Smith said the conversation left him horrified. He believed Hughes might even have been trying to set him up somehow, using him without his knowledge. Smith said he told only one teammate, Ian Callaghan, about what he had heard. After that day, Smith decided he would never speak to Hughes off the pitch again for the rest of his life. That single alleged conversation, whatever really happened that day, planted something between the two men that never went away for the rest of their lives. The following year, in 1973, things got even worse. Tommy Smith had been Liverpool's captain. He had joined the club back in 1960. He was born in the city, and he saw Anfield as his own home. After a disagreement between Smith and manager Bill Shankly made a decision that shocked the dressing room. He took the captaincy away from Smith and gave it to the younger, louder Hughes. Smith saw it as a betrayal. Reports suggest that many of the older Liverpool players quietly sided with Smith rather than Hughes, forming an unofficial camp that never fully accepted the new captain as one of their own. They were tired of his constant talking, his hunger for newspaper headlines, his comfort in front of television cameras, and what some of them saw as a tight grip on his wallet after matches. To this group of players, Hughes looked like an outsider who had stolen something that belonged to somebody else. Smith's later comments about Hughes were sharp and simple. He said Hughes was a very good footballer, but not a good person. He called him two-faced. He joked that Hughes's only friends must have come out of a vending machine because nobody real seemed to actually like him. Smith even said he hated scoring goals for Liverpool because it meant Hughes would run over to congratulate him. Despite all of that anger, something strange kept happening every single weekend. Hughes and Smith formed one of the best defensive partnerships in English football. Their personal hatred never spilled onto the pitch in a way that damaged the team. Manager Bob Paisley did not care whether his players liked each other, as long as they performed once the whistle blew, and he never forced the two men to pretend they were friends. He simply trusted them to do their jobs. That kind of quiet management, focused only on results rather than friendship, allowed two men who could barely speak to each other to keep winning trophies side by side for years. That professional trust paid off in Rome in 1977. Smith scored his header. Hughes lifted the trophy. For one short moment, the cameras caught something that looked like real joy between two men who despised each other almost every other day of their careers. After football ended for both of them, the story split in two very different directions. Tommy Smith carried his bitterness for the rest of his life, and he never really let it go. Hughes, on the other hand, later praised Smith warmly. He called him the greatest captain he had ever played under. He said he respected him completely as a leader on the pitch, even though the two men had never gotten along as people away from it. That kindness from Hughes does not erase what happened. A man who spent years lifting trophies alongside him still described him decades later with real and lasting hatred. That is not a small disagreement. That is one of the deepest personal wounds in the history of that Liverpool dressing room. And in 1974, this same fierce competitive world exploded again, this time on national television against Liverpool's oldest rivals. Billy Bremner captained Leeds United with total intensity. He and Hughes represented two completely different types of leader, fighting for control of English football. Hughes was loud, mobile, and always talking, the kind of captain who wanted every teammate to hear his voice during a match. Bremner was fierce, tactical, and utterly relentless in every physical contest, a captain who led through sheer force of will rather than noise. Both men demanded total effort from their own teammates, and both clubs were locked in a long, bitter battle to be recognized as the best team in the entire country. That rivalry reached a boiling point at the 1974 FA Charity Shield at Wembley. It was the first Charity Shield ever shown live on national television, which meant the whole country would see exactly how these two clubs treated each other. Bob Paisley was starting his first match in charge of Liverpool, and Brian Clough was starting his first match in charge of Leeds. So both sides carried extra pressure to make a strong first impression. Neither team wanted to look weak on such a big occasion, and that pressure only added fuel to an already tense fixture. The atmosphere grew more aggressive as the game went on. Eventually, Liverpool forward Kevin Keegan and Leeds captain Billy Bremner started throwing punches at each other in front of millions of viewers. Both men were sent off. As they walked off the pitch, both of them pulled off their shirts in fury. The Football Association later banned both players for 9 matches each. During that same chaotic afternoon, Hughes struck the crossbar from around 30 yards out, and he fully backed his team's aggressive refusal to be pushed around by Leeds. This was never really about one tackle or one punch. It was about two proud leaders who could not allow their teams to look weak in front of the whole country. Hughes did nothing to calm the situation down that day, because calming things down was never really who he was. His entire identity as a leader was built around matching aggression with even more energy and even more aggression of his own. That approach worked on the scoreboard, but it also meant that conflict followed him everywhere he went. Not every battle around Hughes was fought with tackles and punches, though some of the fiercest arguments about who he really was took place away from the pitch entirely. Inside a hotel meeting room with the England national team, Stan Bowles and Emlyn Hughes were both in an England squad meeting led by manager Don Revie. Revie told the players that their appearance fee for playing for England was going up to £250 a match. According to the research, Hughes stood up in front of everyone and said that money meant nothing to him. He said he played for England purely for the honor and the glory of wearing the shirt. Stan Bowles had a completely different personality. He enjoyed gambling, he disliked official public relations behavior, and he had little patience for speeches about duty and honor. Where Hughes seemed eager to say the right thing in front of the manager, Bowles preferred to say exactly what he thought, whether people liked it or not. That basic difference in character meant the two men were almost never going to see eye to eye, no matter what the topic happened to be. Bowles believed Hughes's little speech was not really about patriotism at all. He believed it was performed for Don Revie's benefit, a way to look good in front of the manager rather than a genuine feeling. In front of the whole squad, Bowles called Hughes a pipsqueak in response. Hughes fired back and called Bowles a fancy Dan who lacked real professional commitment. That short, sharp exchange captured something far bigger than one argument in one hotel meeting room. It showed the growing gap between an older idea of duty to club and country, and a newer, more individual attitude that players like Bowles represented. It also showed a pattern that followed Hughes everywhere. He wanted to be heard, and he wanted to be seen as fully committed. But every big public statement he made only gave his critics another reason to doubt whether any of it was sincere. So the question remains, how could one man create this much anger, resentment, and suspicion among teammates, opponents, and even his own England colleagues, and still end up as one of the most successful captains English football has ever produced? The evidence against Hughes's personality is real, and it is significant. Opposition players like Ron Harris wanted to hurt him. England teammates like Stan Bowles openly mocked him to his face. Tommy Smith hated him with a passion that lasted his entire life. Older Liverpool players did not trust his motives and saw him as a man chasing attention rather than respect. His media-friendly style, his constant talking and his hunger for authority created friction almost everywhere he went inside professional football. None of that is in doubt, and nothing here is written to pretend that Hughes was an easy man to work alongside. But football is not only about who likes who in the dressing room, and the footballing truth about Hughes tells a very different story, one built on trophies rather than friendships. Hughes had incredible stamina that let him run all afternoon without slowing down. He could play at left back, at center half, or in central midfield, often within the very same season. He could carry the ball forward from deep positions in a way that few defenders of his era even attempted. In many ways, he was ahead of his time tactically, showing what a modern defender could become years before that style became common. He captained Liverpool to the European Cup in both 1977 and 1978, standing at the very top of the club game in Europe, not once but twice in a row. He also won major domestic honors across a long and successful career at the very top of English football, wearing the captain's armband through some of the most demanding years the club has ever had. Personal popularity and professional success turned out to be two completely separate things for Hughes, no matter how much some of his teammates wished otherwise. Liverpool never actually needed every single player to be close friends with each other. They only needed their players to trust each other and perform together for 90 minutes, once the referee blew the whistle to start the match. Hughes did not need every teammate to love him, and by the sound of it, most of them probably did not. He was loud. He was relentless. He was ambitious, and he was almost impossible to ignore, on the pitch or off it. Those very same qualities that made him difficult to like also made him exactly the kind of leader that Liverpool needed during their greatest years. He clashed with hard men. He argued with rivals. And he frustrated teammates who wanted quiet loyalty instead of noise. Yet when the whistle blew, his teammates followed him anyway. Match after match, trophy after trophy, all the way to the very top of European football.